All right. This is the Tidewater Goby database. I'm going to do a little tutorial for my Cal State Channel Islands capstone crew, but I'm going to make this public so it's universal for whoever's interested. You can see kind of how we organized our Tidewater Goby database and data, and if you're ever interested, let us know. We're happy to share information. If you don't know what the Tidewater Goby is, this is the Tidewater Goby. It's a really small native fish to California, endemic to California. It's been listed as endangered since 1994. This is the northern Tidewater Goby. There's now 2 species as of 2016. The northern Tidewater Goby, Eucyclogobius newberrii, and this is the southern Tidewater Goby, Eucyclogobius christinae. Very similar looking, but there's quite a bit of differences. And this is the largest one on record that I caught up in a place called Arroyo de Corral near San Simeon. It's a big pregnant female. She probably has about 800 or more eggs inside of her. She was 62 millimeters total length. So getting back to the database, we have a number of tabs down here. This first tab, it says presence absence MVA. So MVA is the metapopulation viability analysis that we were contracted to do with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which essentially determines the likelihood of a Tidewater Goby metapopulation persisting for X amount of years. And you can do it 50 years. We did it for 100 years. And so we needed this in order for our MVA to work. This was a binary code. So if you go on the left, we'll just go by columns. This is recovery units. There's 6 of them. So you scroll down, they're organized from 1 to 6. Recovery unit name. So there's North Crows Greater Bay Area unit, and then each county from north to south. So they go from Del Norte County all the way down to San Diego County. And then these are all the sites that we've been including in our MVA. Most of them are either currently or historically occupied by Tidewater gobies. There's a few in here that have never been occupied by gobies, but we've kind of deemed them as potential introduction sites or restoration sites that, they meet the critical habitat criteria. So we still monitor them even though they haven't had gobies listed. So, and then there's a number of other the management unit number. This is from the recovery plan. So these are the codes in the recovery plan. You can see that there's a number of them that are blank. That's because these were not listed in the recovery plan as potential sites. And then management subunit. A subunit is a metapopulation, or this is the subunit number. So this is essentially just, this should have 1, 1, 1. So, this is just taking the number code that's on here. And then management site number. So that's just stuff from the recovery plan, just to different ways of organizing the sites. There'll be a lot of blanks you'll see. So there's all these sites were not listed in the recovery plan. And then these are groups that grouping of sites that we made ourselves somewhat recently for this MVA. It's just a different way of organizing these sites. And this is coastal group number, coastal order number. So this is really keeping track of the sites as they go down the coast. And this is particularly helpful because when you get to sites like within San Francisco Bay, right, they kind of go back up. And so technically you would have some that are at like higher latitude than others, but in the coastal order, they're, you know, moving down in a different way. So this is how we like to organize the sites, through coastal order. Still same management unit number, site number, and these A's and B's are really just for sites to organize. You'll see some of these are A, B. So this is like Redwood Creek North, Redwood Creek South. We've outlined those as separate separate sites that are monitored separately, but since they connect, they're one population. So that's why they're split up. There's a number of those sites. Here's another one, Mad River Slough. So there's people that go out and survey Mad River, only Mad River, you know, upper, you know, up and upstream in Mad River. And then there's some that just do the slough by the coast. So that's just how we organize them, kind of sites within sites. Okay. Total number of records. You can see a lot of these. Most of these that are not in the recovery plan have very few total records, but a lot of these have quite a bit. And then this is the number of presents out of those. So you can see Tilia Slough, there's 10 records, and out of them have had presents, so it calculates percent occupied. Everything that's in this kind of whatever orange peach color, it automatically calculates for you, so you don't have to ever update this. Okay, these are just some broad categories that have interested us, or things that, you know, we've liked to have quick access to over the years. So sites occupied in the Swift et al. 1988 paper. This was the paper that really was used the most to list the species as endangered, petition for listing. So these were, I think there's 88 sites. If you cruise down at the very end, number of records in this column is 88. So there's 88 sites that Cam Swift surveyed. 60 of them were present, 28 were absent, right? So for the rest of this, the red is absent, green is present, reds will always have zeros. So that's that binary code that we need to have, 0. And then green is always 1. I'll get to these other color codes in a second. Okay, so then these are the sites occupied in the recovery plan, the 2005 recovery plan. So there's many other sites that were found in between listing and the recovery plan that were added. These are all new sites that we've found, or others have found. Doug Rushbeater with State Parks has actually found quite a few new sites. Thanks, Doug. Since 2005, so those are up here. Some of these have still not been confirmed. We should probably make a different color coding for that. Like the Klamath River was an eDNA hit a while back, but no gobies have ever been actually collected there in hand. But most of these, you know, are a lot of different sites that they've been found. Sites that have been extirpated. Many of them are down south, or since 2005, yeah. So these are all in San Francisco Bay or further south. Further south you go, the more extirpations there are. And then sites with no record of occupancy. So these are the sites that we included that have no record, but we've deemed as possible Tidewater Goby sites maybe in the future, or just maybe they're really close to a nearby site that does have Tidewater Goby, so there could be some dispersal. So that's what those columns are for. If you ever need a quick go-to for these color codes and keys, there's this key tab in the back that goes through all of these. And I'll just do this one for now. Green means present, red absent, yellow is unverified or potential introduction locality, and then blue is present and absent. So we'll get into that in a second. But for this MVA, this is just binary code. So starting with the first record in 1857, I think it's right here, Petaluma River. As you go through, you'll see that there's lots of blanks, right? Nobody was really keeping records of gobies throughout the state until Cam really started doing his surveys in the 70s. All right. But this is every single year since, and either present or absent. There was mostly just presence observed prior to listing, very few absences. And then when we get to listing, you'll start to see a mixture of, absences and presence and things like that. But the way that we do this is if a site was ever found this year, so let's say, for instance, in 2012, right here, right? So Wood Creek 2012 is found as present. If someone said surveyed that 4 or 5 times and 4 of those times it was absent, but at least once was present, then we gave it a present for that year. Okay, and that was because this is, again, had to be binary, so it had to be a 0 or a 1. And so the way we characterize this is if there was any presence that year, no matter what, it would get a 1. So these zeros are true absences for the year, record-wise. Doesn't necessarily mean that they weren't absent. It means just all the records that year say it was absent. But ones could possibly have an absent record for that year, but it just means at least one was present. Okay. And that's it. It goes up until 2020. There haven't been a lot of surveys because I didn't get out in 2019 or in 2020, but most of my surveys you can see were done from 2011 to 2018. So those are mostly my surveys. And then at the bottom, you can see how many, so my big year was 137, 87 were present, 55 or 50 were absent, right? So, and 2017 was the big year too, 2015. So that's what this is, okay? The next one just is presence absence. This is the exact same tab as this MVA one, but we didn't make this binary. So this one does have the sites where that blue code is, where there's a present and an absent. So all of these sites were surveyed multiple times a year, and at least one of the times had a present, and at least one of the times had an absent. So that's what this 01 is. Everything else is exactly the same for this. Yeah, so it should all be the same, other than this 01. So this is more for just visual keys. If like, hey, there was definitely an absent this year in not Cocklebur, but French Lagoon. Why doesn't it say absence there? Well, it's because binary, and it must have been at least one presence. But if you go back here, oh yeah, it was a 0 and a 1. Okay, so that's that. The main coast we're still working on. This is the only tab in the database that needs some work. This is just broad characterization of each site. So again, it's the same kind of columns to start it off with: recovery unit, number, name, county, locations, name, management unit number, all that stuff, all the way to the coastal order. So it's the same as the other tabs. And then we get into lat longs. There's DMS lat long and decimal lat long. This stands for degrees, minutes, second. These are decimal points. This is what you typically use for statistics or graphing. These min max habitat size were done real quickly in like Google Earth. We actually have more accurate numbers of these that I should be uploading soon. And then we'll have like distance to nearest neighbor to the north south. And then detection probability will probably be moved. We're gonna add like slope and watershed size or surface area and all that kind of stuff in here for all the sites. So that one will be coming soon. All these other ones are pretty good to go. Every single one, so there's 6 recovery units, and we have each individual recovery unit has a separate tab: North Coast, Greater Bay Area, Central Coast, Conception unit, Point Conception, LA Ventura, and South Coast. Okay, so if you go to these tabs, this is all the records that we know of for that recovery unit by each surveyor. So if I went out today and surveyed Gobies, then I would have a separate row in here for what I found for today. And so you can go through and, Tilia Slough, we have 3 records: 99, 1988, 97. Again, all of these are the same, right? So site, county, lat long, and North Coast, right? All this site number, coastal order number, all these things that were similar. If you are, especially capstone students, if you are going to start working with this data to do any statistics, you have to make sure, and it should be this way, but you have to make sure that like location name, this column heading is the same for all the other ones, right? So see how I have recovery underscore unit underscore number. If I go to this, I should have recovery. So see how it's slightly different. It just says recovery unit, or actually no, it should be. Oh, that column's not in here. Never mind. I'm confusing you. I'm gonna just do coastal order. That'll be a easier one. So if you go to coastal order site number, right, then coastal order site number should be the same. So all of these should be the same. Okay, same kind of format. Cool, so all of this is just basic information on the locality site records. Then you're gonna cruise over to this purple section, and you see it says Northern Tidewater Goby. All of these, the 5 northern localities, North Coast all the way to Los Angeles, Ventura, are all Northern Tidewater Goby. The Southern Coast is the only one that has Southern Tidewater Goby, okay? But this is all the collection survey records. So there's 3 different types of dates. That's because sometimes we have museum records, or there's just broad, this is usually with the older records where it's just like in 1977 gobies were found, and they don't give you a date or a time or anything like that. So that's why we have like things like this. But for the most part, most of these have specific dates and times, or some of them have times, always in military time. I just added this collection method, which you don't have to worry about. That's what we're going to start putting in. So do we catch it with a seine net, or a minnow trap, or a dip net, or just visual surveys, eDNA. Time, fall, spring, summer. Some of these are just broad categories. So if you go to the keys, then it'll give you all the types of variables that can go in those columns, right? So, we have collection method that we just went over. So seine, eDNA, dip, push. So this is what if you're going to enter anything in there, these are the exact things you enter: collection season, fall, spring, winter, right? And then you go through, this is the collection numbers. These are our catalog numbers from our field notes. So every time Cam Swift, CCS, they have these unique codes. That means all the museum specimens that they've collected have that same code, as well as their field notes. So we can go back and if we're interested in any of these, we can get their field notes. You won't be working with that too much with capstone. Inu collected, so Inu is Eucyclogobies newberrii. These are actual specimens that were collected, so we don't have any logs here yet. Collector's code, You can go to the keys section, and everyone that's ever collected a Goby that we know of has a code in here. And then present or absent. Some of these are blank. That's just, there's actually no record for Elk Creek. We just included it in there. So it has a place, but there's no records. Those are the ones highlighted in yellow. And then some of these we're trying, you'll see a lot of these are blank, right? So there's reports that are just like a sentence or two or an old email, typed up letter that just says, hey, I caught gobies. It doesn't say how many seine pulls they did or how many had gobies, but we're trying to keep track of all of that. So some of that stuff, it's usually down more in like the LV unit. We'll see this one had 6 seines, only one of them had gobies, right? 10 seines, but they actually didn't say how many had gobies. Total number of gobies collected in the net. So some of them, are very specific. Some of them are just, 1. So that'd be scarce. 473, moderate, abundant. So how do you know what these are? You go to the keys, right? And absent is 0, rare, less or equal to 5, scarce. So there's all these ranges, okay? Age class, don't worry too much about. Tax private, don't worry too much about. Then there's some broad information on physical data, water quality, things like that. And I think actually the one that I shared with you has so this is the one I shared with you, and it has, like, if you go past the water quality, it'll have all these native biota, so fishes. These are all possible fish species that could be in there, reptiles, amphibians, invertebrates, aquatic plants. Everything in green is native, and everything in red are all, you can see that, and especially in the South Coast, there's lots of non-native species, present, absent of a lot of different invasives, fishes, reptiles, amphibians, invertebrates. So we can think about doing something with that, but I think for the most part, we're going to be doing a lot with just the records, presence, absence by location, and then a lot with this Maine coast, how do certain things, certain trends occur throughout the coast that has to deal with habitat size or slope. Do gobies prefer a certain type of slope? How have, present, absence or extirpation recolonizations changed over the past couple decades, things like that. So that's essentially the database, right? Presence, absence, binary 0, 1 for the MVA. This is non-binary, so has a 0 and a 1. Maine coast data. So this is going to be updated, but it'll have all these characteristics for each site. And then each North Coast, you can see the North Coast only has like 86. There's not a lot of research that goes on in the North Coast, which is like the Humboldt area, Mendocino County. But once you get to Greater Bay, right, there's close to 500. Central Coast is going to have, 160. Conception has a lot. 477. I think LA Ventura, 229, and then South Coast has quite a lot, 495. So it's really detailed. I think for the most part, cleaning it up, which is your job for the next, I think, couple weeks, is for the most part, it's pretty clean. I think just going through and making sure things are typed in correctly. So you can see how all of these are like capitalized, like present, absent, but we want to make sure that there's no lowercase ones in here. I might have gone through this one already. Because that might seem really tedious, but if you're uploading it into some type of statistics program, it'll separate those. Like an absent with a lowercase is different than an absent with an uppercase. So I definitely know that there's some in there. You can see that some of these times, right? Some of them have colons, some of them don't. So we need to make sure that's universal throughout the doc. You know, all these things that are categorical variables, so spring, winter, fall, should all be either capitalized or lowercase. You can choose whatever you want. I think maybe we just go with lowercase and keep everything lowercase. Rare, scarce, right? See how some of them are, that's capitalized, this one's not. So that's the kind of stuff that needs to be updated. I think for some of the physical data, same thing with closed and open. I don't think there's a lot of data, but if that all needs to be universal. Some of this water quality data I noticed had some like greater than or equal signs in it. That's definitely an or. Let's see what I know. I might have taken it out already, but just look for like, so this should, see, this says fresh. This has to be a number, it's numerical. So fresh is 0. Or if it has a greater than or equal sign, just make sure to change that. So I would just go through everything with that and make sure everything is good to go. Make sure all these dates are cleaned up. Even though it might not, you might have some blanks, just make sure everything's in the same format. So it might be good to just break things up by columns or by recovery units, and I think it'll go really fast. Other than that, that's the Tidewater Goby database. Looking forward to doing some cool stuff. See ya.